Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Mike Force Podcast. Happy Monday to you. I have the Monday morning sit rep going out to my Patreon members. I'll link that down below. You could join. It's absolutely free. Also, I did a Mike Glover Stories, which is my backup YouTube channel. I did a 8-minute video, and it's gone viral. It's 625,000 plus views this morning, and I just dropped it yesterday. But I talked about how there's certain things in this investigation with the Charlie Kirk murder that don't sit well with me. And I'm just going to use my background and experience here and tell you what I think is right and what I think seems suspect. I'll get into that in detail here. I also did a Preaching to the Choir episode yesterday, which I do every Sunday as a special edition of this podcast. You can find it on my YouTube channel, the Mike Force Podcast, but also on Spotify. I will also link those things down below. But anyways, we talked about how we move forward. And I think there's several things that we could do. I'll be very quick with this. One is technically we are all Charlie Kirk. We all have a voice. We all have the ability to speak the truth. Charlie wasn't radical. He was one of us. He could have been my brother. He could have been my son. He was speaking his truth, but it also remains the truth for most of us, for a lot of us. And if you listen to the way that he debated and communicated, he did so with humility, keeping our common humanity in mind despite the difference in opinions and views. And he knew that the turning point was children going to college and being brainwashed by radical activists, and he needed to counterbalance that. That's the beauty of our democracy, having these open debates. The difference is when he would do an open debate, people would get so irate, they would want to spit on him, throw things at him, riot. I mean, 3,500 students at UVU signed a petition to ban him from the campus. So much for your First Amendment rights. Maybe you missed that block of instruction at UVU. 3,500 students. Maybe you missed that block. 3,000 students showed up, mostly in support. Obviously, there were people that he had to debate, but I don't get it. I mean, technically, I do get it. Our country is lost, especially our youth. How can we help? Well, I just announced this yesterday. I have a CBD health and wellness company called Wolf 21. We will be taking 10% of all sales up until the end of the month and be cutting a check to Turning Point USA, which is a 501c3. Now, they do have lots of donors, and those donors, according to some people in recent days, were trying to manipulate and shift the ideological position of Kirk and his mission. And he didn't bow down. He didn't back off. He said, I agree that you guys' input is valuable, but I have a position, and this is what we're sticking to, and this is what we're doing moving forward. So if you don't like it, I'm sorry. Well, private money, technically this was private money, but not being a large donor is going to help Turning Point USA because you want to see Charlie Kirk's mission proceed. I actually reached out to Turning Point USA as well to advocate for them. If I could speak at venues, if I could host, whatever I could do to help, I am here to help. They asked me in 2021 if I could advocate for them, and I did. I did a whole bunch of social media posts and truly believed to this day in their mission, and it's important that we pass the torch and continue the good work that Charlie Kirk has done. I'm going to go over the technical information that we have, talk about some of the conspiracies that were communicated, speak to those, and also give you the latest from Kash Patel this morning, about 40 minutes ago while I was in the shower, ironically. Not ironically, I guess there's no irony there, but I'm in the shower. I usually listen to podcasts or the news, and I heard Kash Patel give the most recent information, and a little bit of it contradicts what Governor Cox said yesterday on his speaking to the press tour. He's done several engagements, and he did a big engagement yesterday and claimed that the roommate, who we now know is the boyfriend of the shooter, Tyler Robinson, was very cooperative. That he was the boyfriend, they were intimate, and he was transitioning from man to woman, which is impossible, by the way, but don't worry about that, Governor Cox. We'll school you up on science later. That he was very cooperative, almost to the point where you're like, okay, we get it. Stop pandering. There's a lot of pandering going on. We get it. What I want to know is, was he an accessory? Was the boyfriend an accessory? And this morning, Kash Patel said, technically, in a roundabout way, he was. Now, it's not up to the FBI. It's up to the Department of Justice or the state prosecutors in this case to bring those charges. But for sure, he was an accessory. Apparently, there was a note. Cox described the note, which is why Patel was asked the question. So tell me about this note. Well, there was a note, except Cox failed to mention that the note had been ripped up and disposed of. And despite that, the reason he was so cooperative was because he was communicating what was in that note. Guess what was in that note? Now, the FBI found forensic evidence of proof of note. And in that note, it describes how he was going to take out Charlie Kirk. That doesn't sound like a cooperating witness. That sounds like an alleged accomplice that's trying to save their own ass. That's what that sounds like. So let's get into the timeline. Let's break it down. September 10th, Wednesday. This feels like, if you would have told me this was a year ago, I would believe you. Approximately 12:20 to 12:23, Kirk, Turning Point USA, is speaking at Utah Valley University. Now, there were allegedly, I think this is the minimum number, 3,000 people there. Guess how many officers were providing protection for this group of people and Charlie Kirk's team? 6. 6 total. Heber City County Fair has more support with a couple hundred people than 3,000 people at a college campus. I just spoke at Charlie Kirk's vigil, and we had a few hundred people there. There were at least 10 officers from Provo PD. 4 squad cars, 10 officers at a minimum for a couple hundred people. You had 3,000 people with history of violence that has taken place where they've had to evacuate their team, where people were rioting, where 3,500 students wanted to protest him coming there. They started with signing a petition, and you had 6 officers there. Okay, let's continue. It's part of his comeback tour. He sets up a pop-up tent, and he basically says in the pop-up tent, prove me wrong. And he has a debate. He has a microphone in front of him. He sits in a chair. This is typically put on his YouTube channel and then part of his segment for his podcast, and they're really big on TikTok. So he's addressing a crowd of 3,000, and he gets into his Q&A. The first question is asked, and it has to do with mass shootings. Kirk is shot reportedly in the neck. That was confirmed by an affidavit. This round was not an exit round that was in his neck. It was not a round that entered his chest. It was not a deflection or ricochet off of his body armor. It was a direct hit in his neck. That literally severed his carotid artery, which we all saw, and then indexed likely in his spinal cord and his neck. And he was gone. He had no ability to fight. He had no ability to activate his central nervous system. He didn't clutch his neck with his hand. He clenched his fist, and he was shut down, and that was it. I think he expired likely prior to him getting to the hospital, which, by the way, is the hospital right down the road. This is the hospital that I went to the ER for my lower back, got an MRI, and then got surgery. It's called Timpanogos. It's right down the road. It's a level 3 trauma center. I don't care if they had a surgical room prepped and took him from the vehicle to the table, he likely would not have survived. All the speculation that I've seen and investigated, looked at videos. I've even seen a lot of AI-generated videos, all scams. Either foreign adversaries or just people who are basement dwellers who are making things up, or people like me who are offering an opinion, and it's just potentially wrong. I mean, I've had it wrong before. I'll talk about one of those wrongs as we get into this. Shortly after, first responders Charlie Kirk, his protection detail did, not first responders. I mean, technically you can call them first responders. They loaded him into a vehicle, and he undergoes emergency surgery, but is pronounced dead later in the afternoon. They tried to get him into surgery. I'm not buying the fact that he died on the table. I think it was just too late. And again, that's my opinion. Trump post around 2:40 p.m. on Truth Social that Kirk had been shot and that he passed away. And he called him legendary and expressed condolences. September 10th through 11th, the evening and overnight, authorities released surveillance images and videos identifying a person of interest and issue a $100,000 reward. Law enforcement notes that the shooter fled across campus and to a nearby wooded area. Investigators later recover what's believed to be a weapon, a Mauser 30-06, I think it's model 98, 30-06 bolt-action rifle, along with physical evidence, palm and footprint impressions, and a towel and screwdriver found in the rooftop hideout, later testing positive for the suspect's DNA. Now, that just dropped this morning. The towel and the screwdriver were on the rooftop. Now, why did he have a towel and a screwdriver? Well, he probably assembled the rifle on the rooftop. He likely had it broken down. Now, there is speculation that he had it down his leg and then walked up into a certain position, but it could have been broken down his leg. I can't imagine he would have had the full rifle. Now, for those listening to this or watching this who aren't familiar with a Mauser 30-06, it's a hunting rifle. 30 denotes the caliber in inches, .30, and then the 06 denotes the time roundabout that it came into existence in 1906. It is a very large round. In 1950-ish, the 7.62 by 51 .308 round came about, which is the modern version of that round. Now, this round packs a punch. It actually has more muzzle velocity, more foot-pounds of energy than a standard .308 round, 7.62 by 51. Now, the screwdriver, the towel, likely what he wrapped the rifle in. The screwdriver was left behind on the roof. The towel, I believe, is what he used to wrap the rifle in. I speculated that he came off the rooftop and he didn't have a rifle. I've watched that video 100 times. I actually got a more improved video because the first video that I saw on social was compressed. Subsequently, and I think this is my mistake, it appears that he came off the roof with a rifle cloaked in a cloth. Now, it doesn't look like a towel, but they could have said towel. I'm thinking, you tell me towel, I'm thinking what I have in my bathroom. It could have been a beach towel. It appears to be dark blue, dark black, and it appears that it's wrapped. Now, the speculation was he left it behind or he broke it down, and he wouldn't leave it behind, and he wouldn't break it down only to re-put it together and chuck it in the woods. It does appear, based on the videos that I saw, which is my mistake in my analysis, that he came off the roof with a full-size rifle, which, look, I'm trying to navigate this with you. If he assembled the weapon on the roof, which is just basically putting the bolt on the stock, throwing the bolt which goes into it, which latches down and creates a closed breech on the round that's in the back of the barrel, then that all makes sense. Nothing is standing out to me that's crazy. What is crazy is if he wanted to not be caught, he wouldn't do this, which is why I spoke to the fact that he's probably not a professional, but he's somebody who has training, has experiences. He did a rehearsal. And let me just say something about successful actions on that you could naturally, instinctively assume. If somebody has a successful assassination, right? This guy initially gets away with it. His dad is the one who turns him in. They saw the media released it. The pictures for sure is what drew them in. But this guy's from this young man is from a small town, Washington, Utah. His family is really conservative. His dad is not a 27-year law enforcement. That was the pastor, the youth pastor, and family friend. So how does he get this type of skill set? How does he get away with it? And then there's the other motive thing, which we'll get into. If he has a successful actions on, then he had a successful infill. Then he had likely a rehearsal, which means he likely had a plan, which means he likely did course of action development and has associates, enablers, and people who know about the op. And when you backwards plan the success of actions on versus like suicide by cop, you go out there, you start running and gunning, and desperation, you get gunned down. He wanted to get away. So why would he leave the towel? The rifle. I mean, he infilled with the rifle broken down, likely. So why would he infill or exfil and take the rifle and chuck it in the woods? Why would he leave his DNA or handprints on it unless he wanted to be caught? But apparently he didn't want to be caught because he fled. He fled the scene. We'll get into that, but let's continue. So they release the footage, and then on September 11th, on Thursday, FBI and local law enforcement released clear images, which were AI manipulated. And then they have the suspect's movements, including climbing down from the rooftop and fleeing the scene. The suspect's father recognizes his son, Tyler Robinson. A little bit about Tyler Robinson. Tyler Robinson was in an apprentice program to be an electrician. He had got a full ride academic scholarship because he had a 4.0 GPA. As described by several students who went to school with him, he was quiet, he was humble, and he was a good student. 4.0 GPA, 26 out of 28 in ACT. Gets a full ride academic scholarship, and then we don't know what happens. He kind of pisses it away. It's gone. And then he's doing an internship. Well, it might be involved in his relationship with his boyfriend. Now, his boyfriend was transitioning from man to woman, as Cox described, which, again, we already described that that's not possible. But, okay, that happened. So maybe he was embarrassed. And maybe he wanted to defend his boyfriend. And in defending him, he would come out and be the machismo guy, and take out Charlie Kirk, who, by the way, has very much so the opinions of leading organizations in mental health and science that describe this as a mental health disorder. And when he talks about it, he does so with humility. I mean, he treats these people with respect. But he tells them, like, getting any kind of hormonal treatment as a child is wrong. Again, a lot of people agree with the things that he's saying, and he's not aggressive, radical, extreme about it. He's actually pretty respectful about it. So maybe that was the motive. Here's the problem I have. Law enforcement, including the FBI, wraps this dude up, rolls him up, and says, we got him. Cox said that verbatim. We got him. Okay? You got him. A lot of people ask me, why is this not a terrorist? Why is there not a terrorist charge associated with this? Well, one, there is no domestic terrorist charge. It is a federal charge of terrorism. And the state has already charged him, which means the state, Cash Patel, from what it seems, is going along with this program of supporting the state in this capital murder charge, or this egregious aggravated murder charge. And the state of Utah still has the death penalty. So likely he will get the death penalty. My problem is what I've heard on the back end and what I'm seeing on the front end. So on the front end, no speak of associates, no communication about the potential of this being a foreign adversary. When I see something like this with my foreign counterterrorism experience wrapped up into domestic, living my best life as a civilian, I think, well, this dude potentially was recruited. He's got a handler. He's got somebody pulling the strings. Now, it could be virtual. It could be somebody from Reddit. These Reddit and Discord threads, they've gotten into them, and the stuff they're seeing is very dark, they said. I don't even know what that means. They need to release it and then hold these people accountable. But there are dark sides of the web where these kids go, these young men, impressionable men and women go. When they're not being influenced by radical professors, they're being influenced by radicals online, including foreign adversaries. And those foreign adversaries could be pulling him to a separate conversation, influencing him, educating him, motivating him, which is part of the motive, motivating him to conduct an act of violence on behalf of his own proposed ideology. Well, if you have a boyfriend and he's transitioning, you want to protect him, right? And this could be a deliberate act of foreign terrorism. And it already exists. I mean, there's troll farms that exist that aren't just trolling people online. They're trying to recruit kids online. It's the whole premise behind the entire AQ movement, which is called Inspire, to literally radicalize the youth to conduct acts of violence against the West. So why would we not consider that? Well, how do you know, Mike, it's not being considered? Well, because friends of mine in the intelligence community, because I used to work for the agency, and I work with other organizations in the intelligence community, which is 17 organizations being managed by the DNI. Several people have contacted me and said the FBI has shut them out. Now, there are charters in place where the FBI does investigations on these type of events inside the country, domestically, and the other charters say, for example, the CIA will do it outside. But there are things like the Joint Terrorism Task Force, part of NORTHCOM. The JTTF is doing domestic analysis, which include CIA, NSA, all these intelligent people, targeters, analysts, case officers that are looking and reviewing all this information, and they didn't have access. They couldn't even get basic investigative information. They were pushed out. Why would you do that? Well, seemingly, and I just get this opinion from Patel. Patel's like the officer, the lieutenant colonel who got his pee-pee smacked by the group commander or by like the JSOC general, right? Being Trump. And he's made mistakes. And now he's trying to show and demonstrate that he's transparent and that he supports the general. And he's overcompensating. In that overcompensation, he's also holding the information because this is our deal. We did it in 33 hours. We broke records. Nobody's been this transparent. All of the things he said this morning on Fox News. And that's what happens culturally in these organizations. And it blocks good people out like, I don't know, the hard-working men and women of the CIA whose expertise is looking at these networks, and maybe they should have their hand in the pot to understand what this is. And we shouldn't just, as local, state law enforcement, federal law enforcement, and the DOJ go, we did a good job, guys. We wrapped it up. Because I think there's potentially a foreign adversary nexus and network that's recruiting these kids on the dark web. Well, Mike, it's probably not that. It's probably just these kids being radicalized. And if it's that as well, then we'll discover that as well as debunk the foreign adversary claim. But we need to look into it is what I'm saying. And I'm also saying this is not new. This is happening again and again and again in active shootings at schools, at churches, people killing each other all over the place because they're being radicalized online. Why are we not digging deep into this one and just writing it off like it's a 22-year-old kid who, wanted to defend his boyfriend, and then he just grabbed a rifle and went to work? Speaking about that, a lot of people have said, It's not hard to shoot at 200 yards and hit a soup can, whatever they're saying, right? And I'm being facetious and sarcastic here. But there is a difference between shooting a target made of paper, a soup can, a watermelon, on a fence post, on a 75-degree day, laying flat on your belly, and doing it for real in front of 3,000 people with the prospect of you being gunned down in the process. When I teach tactical training to civilians and we do a stress shoot and we elevate the heart rate with 5 minutes of calisthenics, we get them to about 70% of their max BPM, 160, 170 beats per minute, 150 beats per minute if you're healthy. People screw everything up. That person who's like, yeah, I'm a gunfighter, and they're putting the round through the hole they created with the other rounds and pressing the buddy next to them. As soon as you induce stress, they fall apart. And that's just a natural conditioning protocol, right? You want to get better at that, you do it again and again and again. You get the reps in. You get immersed in stress, score more targets, peer pressure. You look at time constraints, physical exercise, cardiovascular, and strength. And then you go do it, and it's very difficult. That's what it is. Cortisol, norepinephrine, the adrenaline running through your body makes it more difficult to accomplish those simple tasks. So I understand this process. I train it for a living, and I understand that this person, to do this so well, that tells me he has training. So if you tell me he just was radicalized one day and he woke up, even within the last year, and then conducted this attack, I'm calling BS. The BS flag comes up. I'm calling BS. I don't think that's how it works. And if that's how it worked in this particular case, we need to find out, where exactly did he get the training? Where exactly did he go on the dark webs to talk to people about what he was going to do, and what advice was he given? Was he recruited? All of these are just questions we need to ask, and to think that it wasn't a terrorist attack and to write it off within the first 33 hours and Governor Cox comes out and we got him. Okay, you got one guy. Who else do you have? Because a plot this significant with this rate of success doesn't just fall on one person. And we've seen this in the past. We saw it with the Mandela Bay shooter. We saw it with the Trump assassin. The dude didn't even have silverware in his home. No further investigation. We wrote it off because he's gone. They're using that same scapegoat, by the way, with Epstein. What difference does it make? They're sounding like Hillary Clinton talking about Benghazi. What difference does it make? He's gone. No, he's gone. His network still exists. The facilitators who enabled the ability for people to come over, even the person who flew the jet should be held accountable that were harming these children. And so that same model is the model they're applying here, and they're like, yeah, there's nothing to see here. We got the guy. No, you got a guy who's 22 years old. I want to know about everybody else around him. Lastly, in the days following, Tyler Robinson is reportedly not cooperating, which I don't find that surprising. DNA matches on items from the crime scene, the towel, screwdriver, possibly the rifle. We don't know yet. The rifle was sent off to ATF. Discord messages show Robinson exchanging joking comments during the manhunt, referencing the bullet casing inscriptions, mocking being the suspect, and joking about faking his death. Investigators are interviewing friends, family members, including a roommate, to establish motive. Next court date, Robinson, first court appearance is scheduled for September 16th, and there is a memorial service for Kirk set, I believe it's 21 September. I think Trump just talked about this. Guys, I'm off to the underground. We're going to do the Patreon underground version of this, which is my Monday morning sit rep, as well as a couple pieces of content this week. I got to get to a Q&A for my Patreon members as well. I want to say thank you so much for all the support. I see all the analytics going through the roof. I'll link all my channels and all my stuff down below, and then I'll see you here in a few days for another podcast. Till next time, peace.